Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/ProRevenge, where people get back at others who've wronged them and lives are literally getting destroyed. And in today's episode, we've got people fighting back against nasty teachers, thieving neighbors, shady banks, and one OP reaches a breaking point and fights back against somebody who made their life a living nightmare. It's a wild one today, guys, so sit back, relax, and seriously, try not to shake your heads too hard at these stories today. So I had a stupid neighbor that would always walk into my backyard, take my gas can of gas for my mower and put it in his car and mower, and then return the can. I found this out because I began to get a little suspicious that this 5-gallon can was always empty every time I went to mow the lawn. This was back before cheap and easy security cameras, so I set up a webcam from my laptop with motion detection software. I caught the guy going into the backyard literally 5 minutes after I left the house. And here's my revenge. For the next week, every single time I had to go pee, I would go in that gas can. The gas can's now full of pee, but it still smells enough like gas to fool an idiot. I then left it on the back patio again. I made a big show of checking the fluids in my car and packing a few bags. I made sure the neighbor knew that I was getting ready to go on a trip, that I'd be gone for a while, hoping he takes the bait. I come back home a little while later, and the thief's in his front yard, pulling the rope on his lawnmower so hard. It actually looks like he's gonna have a stroke. The guy's turning bright red and cursing. Later, he gets into his car and he makes it a couple of blocks up the road, and suddenly, the car breaks down. I check the gas can on my patio and it's empty. Also, I just want to add that this guy was a huge piece of crap and that's not the only thing he did. I find out he had arrest warrants, so I end up getting him arrested by applying for a sheriff's ride-along program in his name. Okay, that last bit about the ride-along program was honestly the real pro-revenge. Well played, OP. Like, if you're stealing from people, you deserve nothing good coming your way. And this next OP also deals with a thieving neighbor. So several years ago, my friend, who we'll call Boris, and I would always help each other do spring cleanup for our properties. This included things such as taking out damaged trees, preparing garden plots, and taking care of our weed-infested yards. I was going to be the first on cleanup detail, so I prepared tools and everything the Friday before the big cleanup was to happen. I was sharpening tools and chainsaw chains, the lawnmower blade, and just getting everything in order. Among those tasks was mixing gas with 2-cycle oil. I finished up kind of late, and generally, I just put things away for the next day. The next morning, Boris shows up with coffee and biscuits at around 8 a.m. As we're sitting on the tailgate enjoying breakfast, my neighbors ride by in their beat-to-hell Chevy Cavalier, smoking like a freight train. We'll call them Rocky and Bullwinkle. Boris and I made the usual jokes about the amount of smoke pouring from the exhaust. I remember saying something like, I bet they go to the gas station and they fill up with oil and check the gas. We soon finished breakfast and we thought no more about it. As we begin to get the tools laid out, I can't find my gas cans. No mixed gas, regular gas, or gas can in general. And that's when it dawned on us why the car that Rocky and Bullwinkle were driving was smoking so bad. And I'm pissed, to say the least. Well, all Boris and I could do was go shopping for gas cans and more 2-cycle oil. After we returned, we saw Rocky and Bullwinkle pass by several times, but all in all, we got a lot done. The next weekend, we dedicated to clean up Boris's place. A couple of weeks later, my wife and I were at a family dinner hosted by Rocky and Bullwinkle's grandparents. By the end of the night, most of the family had already headed home. I was chatting with my wife's grandfather when I got up to use the bathroom. On my way back, I spot a gas can with a very distinctive paint job sitting in the corner of the garage. I immediately recognized it. It was one of the gas cans that disappeared from my property. I asked my wife's grandfather where he'd gotten it, and he casually told me that Rocky and Bullwinkle had left it there. That's when I laughed and I explained that it actually belonged to me. I grabbed that can along with another one that was also mine, and I loaded them into my truck. Even after getting my gas cans back, I couldn't let it go. Every time that smoke-belching piece of junk rolled past my house, it reminded me that they had stolen from me without a second thought. So this is when I came up with a little plan. I bought a few gallons of gasoline, a few gallons of diesel, and mixed in several different oils to create what I can only describe as the worst fuel cocktail imaginable. I poured it into the brand new 6-gallon gas can that I'd been forced to buy after mine disappeared. That evening, I filled my lawnmower with clean gas, and I made a point of mowing the front yard while Rocky and Bullwinkle were outside. I wanted them to see exactly where I put my gas can afterwards. Then, I accidentally left the bait can sitting in plain sight. The next morning, I went to work like normal. When I got home, the first thing I checked was the gas can, and it was gone. My wife couldn't stop smiling. She watched Rocky and Bullwinkle help themselves to my free gas, and not long afterwards, their car starts coughing, sputtering, and blowing even more smoke than usual. The last time it drove past the house, it never came back. About an hour later, they knocked on my door asking if I could come take a look at their car, that if I couldn't fix it on the side of the road, that maybe I could tow it home for them. I told them that I had a long day at work, had a terrible migraine, and maybe I would look at it tomorrow. And the panic on their faces was priceless. That's when they admitted the car wasn't insured and it was stranded on a busy road. I just shrugged and I said, that sounds like a rough situation. Sure enough, Highway Patrol eventually found the abandoned car and they had it towed. It would cost them around $500 to get it out of impound, and they would also need a valid registration and insurance. Considering the car was barely worth that much, they simply abandoned it. And you think they would have learned their lesson, right? But no. A local pastor felt sorry for them and donated an old Ford Taurus. Over the next month, they somehow managed to help themselves to a few more cans of my special free gas. Eventually, that engine locked up too, this time right in front of their parents' driveway. They end up hauling it off to the scrapyard. And then tax refund season rolled around, and they bought themselves a decent-looking Ford F-150. And wouldn't you know it, that truck eventually started smoking too. This time, they actually took it to a mechanic who figured out exactly what happened. The repair bill came to roughly $1,500. Funny enough, after spending hundreds on towing fees and losing 2 vehicles and paying another $1,500 to fix the truck, they suddenly stopped helping themselves to my gas. Turns out, free gas isn't always free. Again, thieving neighbors deserve nothing good coming their way. And the fact the guys didn't clue in and they destroyed multiple vehicles by repeatedly stealing OP's gas, I frickin' love it. And this next OP felt they needed to get some revenge against their bank. Listen to this one. For some reason, God knows why, I thought I would trust a very small and local credit union with some of my money. Recently, my card didn't work on the ATM, so I asked for help inside the branch and the clerk gave me a code to use that would deduct cash directly from my account. This is a feature the bank has. I wasn't having special treatment. Fast forward a few days, and it seems the bank system has flagged my account for review because of some accounting error being late to deduct my balance. I didn't go on to overdraft or anything, it was just a minor mistake from their side. And still, for over a month, all of my funds were locked, and whenever I called my bank support, I was given snarky responses, sometimes even hinting that they didn't like my foreign-sounding last name. When I spoke to my family back home to vent about this situation, a younger cousin came up with an idea. use some Russian service that pays people a few Russian rubles each time to post whenever you ask them on social media. This service worked like magic. The website even had the option to choose between American-looking profiles and other locales. After the most well-spent $3 of my life, the credit union's social media was flooded with hundreds of complaints. I'm sure this got to the right ears because on the same day, the bank's call center manager personally called me to say that they understand my frustration, and even if I don't want my account anymore, the bank's ready to initialize a transfer of my full balance, plus $50 compensation to any other bank of my choosing. Problem solved. They probably also realized there was no way to link this activity to me, and hence hinted at ending things on a positive note. Too bad I can't tell the Russian bots to remove their post. That'll be someone else's problem now. So this happened in high school when I was about 15 years old. This year would be the first year where we'd take chemistry classes, and I was absolutely stoked, as I loved biology and science, so I figured I would love chemistry as well. The whole class was excited for our first chemistry lesson ever, as we had heard from older students that chemistry was a fun class with a ton of fun experiments. And at first sight, the teacher seemed like an awesome guy. But oh boy, were we all wrong. And I do want to note that this was the first year the teacher was working at this school. Now, my class had a few clowns in them who would make the occasional jokes. Nothing too bad, they would still pay attention and respect the teacher overall. This teacher hated it and would often make the whole class stay behind after the bell rang. When we'd be late to our other classes, we would point out that this horrible teacher made us stay behind. And the guy would deny doing such a thing when the other teachers would ask him about it. The whole class would get in trouble. Now that wasn't the worst thing though. The worst thing about this teacher was that once he got slightly pissed off, which was extremely easy, he would just stop teaching the class. He would just sit behind his desk and stare at us. Occasionally, if he was feeling generous, he would put on a YouTube video that would do the teaching for him. Also, whenever we did experiments, I would ask for an explanation on why something gave a certain chemical reaction. The guy would just laugh at me and tell me that I should have paid attention during his explanation. An explanation that hadn't even taken place. Also, he would often put stuff in his tests that wasn't even in the book, saying that we should be able to understand these things by using common sense. And please, how do you use common sense on solving equations? Now, as you can imagine, everyone's grades were absolutely miserable. They were so bad, in fact, that I and a ton of others weren't even passing the year. That's when I decided to take action, and I asked classmates to ask their parents to start sending emails to this teacher, hoping this would wake him up. It didn't. In fact, the guy didn't respond to any emails that were sent to him. I was getting more and more frustrated with this guy, and I'm not somebody who likes to confront people, but with the end of the school year coming closer and closer, I decided that I had to take some kind of action. So I decided to confront this teacher with his behavior. Scared as I was, I went up to this teacher after school to ask him why he was doing all of this, and why he didn't respond to any emails. He always just laughed, and he sent me away with a ton of sarcastic remarks, and that got my blood boiling. At this point, I was so done with this guy. And here comes the ProRevenge. I collected all of the emails that were sent to him from both parents and students. I recorded a few of his classes on my phone to collect as much evidence as I could. These videos, of course, showed how much of a lousy teacher this guy was. The best thing was when I decided to record a confrontation with him in class where he would actually say some pretty nasty things to me and a few other students. I recorded him calling me a lousy bitch and him saying that my mother didn't do a good job at raising me. Of course, I was extremely angry, but at the same time, I was happy I knew I got it on recording. When students out of his other classes heard what I was doing, they were absolutely stoked, and they provided me with much more evidence. In the end, I made this incredibly long document with all the videos and pictures included, with all the evidence and statements on why this teacher was absolutely incompetent and begging for an exemption in this class. I sent it to all the important people of our school. 2 days later, I was taken out of English class and told to go see the principal. I explained everything to him in person, and I told him I knew my whole class would tell him the exact same story. I also asked him how come the school hadn't taken action in advance, seeing as practically everyone in the chemistry class had a D or lower. He apologized and he said he would look into it. After the talk, he went straight to the horrible teacher's class and took him into his office. I don't know exactly what happened inside that office, but I can tell you it was a lot messier when I and a classmate came back there after approximately 30 minutes. In the end, horrible teacher was fired and everyone got an exemption in chemistry. Sadly, a lot of people, including me, had to drop chemistry the next year due to a major disadvantage in the class. I am happy he got fired though. Seriously, who else never gets tired of hearing about students getting back at nasty teachers? And what a well-played and necessary revenge that was. Like, kudos to OP for even having the nerve to gather evidence like that to ruin this guy's career. And this next OP tells a wild story about getting back at their dad and his girlfriend. So I'm warning you in advance, this is gonna be a long one. The names of people and places have been changed for discretion. Also, I don't expect you to believe it's true. Everyone has the right of doubt. The revenge mainly goes towards my thankfully no longer stepmom, but it came with a side of F you to my dad, who at the time was an enabler. This story is part of the reason I have borderline personality organization. For those who are not familiar with it, it's not a disorder. I can function on a much higher level than somebody with a personality disorder. However, not as highly as someone healthy. I'm putting this beforehand because you need to understand I wasn't always like this. This revenge is the result of my personality being slowly and painfully crushed and getting a last kick out with its last breath. That last breath of my dying personality wasn't in vain. I'm getting the much needed therapy and help, and I'm making amazing progress. Part of that progress is sharing this. And the thing is, I've only shared this story with my therapist until now. Also, while reading, you might be wondering, why did your real mom not help you? Well, she left with another dude when I was just a baby, and she reconnected with me 2 years after these events take place. But that's a story for another time. Here's the background. You see, my dad's a little bit of a narcissist, but at the same time, he's really intelligent and smart. And the combination of these traits was really conflicting. He raised me the dad is always right way, while at the same time always told me to stand up for myself and never give up. He raised me to be an adult since I was a little child, and he taught me everything I know, even the things I needed and used for this revenge. When I was around 9 years old, we moved to a set of islands in a Hispanic country. Let's call them Palm Islands. We moved here because my dad hated our country and he wanted to flee. Now this is important to the story because he didn't want to move back at all cost. The island we were staying on at the time we'll call Island A. Island A was nice, and I quickly learned Spanish and I fit in pretty well with the other kids. There were at least 50 nationalities in our school, so being a foreigner wasn't an issue. My dad was single, so he was pretty active on dating sites. On these dating sites, he met someone who I'll call Lilith. Now, Lilith was a true narcissist in all the aspects you can imagine. She was a teacher, but she never had kids of her own, even though she wanted. She was from Island B. The funny thing is she catfished my dad. It was a nice surprise when he went to pick her up at the airport and he was greeted by around 110 kilograms more than what he was expecting. Anyways, they got together and everything seemed fine at the beginning. That's when the big 2008 crisis hit, and it hit really hard in Hispanic countries. My dad was let go at his job and was unemployed. Lilith offered for us to move in with her on Island B. My dad accepted without hesitation because he didn't want to go back to our country, so this is where the issues start. The first problem was when we moved to Island B, we moved to a really rural and small, xenophobic little crap hole of a town. They absolutely hated anyone that wasn't from a Latin origin. Well, guess who was the only non-Latin foreigner? If you guessed me, you guessed right. And it was living hell. I didn't even get the chance to fit in. I was bullied all the time. And not just by students, teachers did it, and they even encouraged it. Sometimes, I was pushed around on my way home every week or so by 3 or 4 students, and I remember a time when I was laying on the ground getting kicked by who knows how many kids. The teachers never did anything. They would just watch, shrugging, and then moving on. If this wasn't bad enough, here comes the fun part, Lilith. If the bullying from the school wasn't enough, Lilith made sure I hated my life. She couldn't stand that my dad loved me more than her, so she really made effing sure of it. And why didn't my dad intervene, you might ask? Remember I said he didn't want to move back to our country at any cost? Well, the cost of seeing my life destroyed was one he was willing to pay. So he just sat and watched as I suffered. You see, Lilith would always ground me for anything. She would give me really specific instructions for really specific tasks that were impossible to follow. When I obviously failed, I got grounded. Grounding me meant forcing me to stay in my room with all forms of enjoyment taken away. Basically, all I could do was look at an empty wall, and Lilith actually enjoyed the fact that I was always in constant psychological terror. I was always berated, insulted, and talked down to. I heard daily from her that nobody loves me, not even my dad, and no one ever will. That I'm a waste of space, a piece of human garbage, all the things you can possibly imagine that you don't want a kid to be told. This seemingly endless nightmare got a bit better when my dad got a job at Island A and we could move back on our own. But I wasn't the same anymore. I was having serious depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. I started smoking and drinking. I couldn't fit in again. I knew that if I wanted to get my life together, I would need to move back to my home country. But you see, being underage, I couldn't do it, and my dad didn't want to move back. Even though we moved back to Island A, we were still relying pretty heavily on Lilith financially. So I knew if they broke up, we wouldn't have a choice than to move back. And just a quick recap about Lilith. She's a sour lady in her late 40s. She's a teacher, but never had kids of her own, even though she wanted. She was unhappy with her life in general, and being the true narcissist she is, she blamed everything on the world. She hadn't dumped my dad because she's well aware of her traits, and she knew if they broke up, she would most likely end up alone. And this is where I wanted to hit. I knew that I had to go all out on this one if I wanted them to break up, so I hatched my master plan. But I wasn't just gonna make them break up. I was out for destroying Lilith's entire life in the process, and make my dad do what he didn't want to do while seeing me suffer. And here's the setup. Now, remember when I said that my dad was active on dating sites? Well, he was really active once he got back to Island A. He was relentlessly cheating on Lilith. So the first thing I did was I bought an extra SIM card for my phone. I needed a new phone number for a new WhatsApp account. I knew that if my dad deemed a lady from a dating site worthy of hooking up with, he would ask for a phone number so they don't lose contact. As I couldn't imitate a woman's voice, I opted for leading him on over WhatsApp. Next, I set up a few dating profiles on one of the sites I knew my dad was actively searching on, and I made his idea of a perfect woman in every aspect come to life. I spent days fabricating every aspect of her personality and life. This character was named Paula. Paula was a thin, blonde, beautiful, intelligent lady who worked on Island B as a makeup artist. I fabricated a whole life for her. She grew up in a family with 4 brothers. She loved sports, philosophy, and psychology. The little twist is Paula is the exact opposite of Lilith in every possible way. It was perfect. With this information at hand and my WhatsApp and dating profile set up, I was more than ready to unleash hell upon those who wronged me. And here's the execution. I started surfing the dating site. As with dating sites in general, you can't just search for a person specifically. So I had to go over 200 profiles to finally find my dad and mark that I'm interested in him. That same night, he matches with Paula and we start chatting. And he's loving Paula, every single bit of her. While chatting, I steer the conversation to make him say things like, "You're my perfect woman in every way. And where have you been all of my life?" Those sorts of things. The sorts of things I know that would get through Lilith's narcissistic wall of protection and hit her in the very core. My dad was laying it on Paula, making comments on how he just met the perfect woman on a dating site. He spent basically an hour worshipping her and telling her why she's perfect for him in every way. And guys, it was the hardest thing not to grin like I just hit the effing jackpot. The next day, I spent all day as Paula chatting with him, and this is when he asked for a mobile number. He wants to hear Paula's angelic voice. I was prepared, and the conversation went something like this. Dad says to Paula, "I'm having a really nice time talking with you, and I'm afraid you might just disappear, as happened with others. So what if we exchange numbers?" I type back as Paula, and I say, "I'm having a really nice time as well with you. But sadly, I've been catfished a lot, and I'm really cautious when it comes to talking to strangers on the internet. But anyways, I'm really liking you, so I'll kind of make an exception. Give me your phone number and we'll communicate on WhatsApp so we don't lose contact. But promise me that you won't call me until I say I'm ready to talk to you." Dad responds, "I can totally understand that and I respect it, so let's do it your way." The conversation goes on in WhatsApp, and I'm taking screenshot after screenshot of everything I know will hurt Lilith. After a week of talking, I have everything I want to send to her. I sent her every screenshot, every piece of conversation that I knew would hurt her, every sentence where my dad describes the perfect ideal woman, and it's exactly the opposite of her. Every message where my dad says things to Paula that Lilith always wanted to hear but never got. And let me tell you, it felt so good. And here's the aftermath. Of course, my dad got confronted by Lilith, and by confronted, I mean she traveled to us on Island A, knocking hysterically on our door at 2 a.m. I couldn't make out anything of what she says because of the tsunami machine that her face has become. Oh, and the screeching. I'm loving every tear and every moment of it. She's truly suffering. They break up and Lilith is screeching and throwing punches. The police get called. In a fit of rage, Lilith makes the mistake of hitting one of the officers. I've never seen somebody slammed into the ground with such grace. It was truly glorious. As police are escorting her out, I have the biggest smile on my face, and ultimately, we moved back to our home country. Oh, and guess who lost her teaching license? If you guessed Lilith, you guessed right. Turns out, after this incident, she had to undergo a really strict psychological examination, which was a long time coming in my opinion, where they determined that she's unfit for teaching. Big surprise. What a fallout that was, guys. And for those wishing that Dad faced bigger consequences, Opie did pop into the comments to say that Dad suffered a lot by having to move back to his home country that he hated with a passion and that karma always comes around. So I'm assuming Dad got what he deserved in the end. But yeah, what a wild revenge that was, guys. Catfishing your own dad to get evidence to destroy his girlfriend's life. Wild. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /ProRevenge. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where a psycho Karen boss forces OP to quit, and it's the worst mistake of her life, guys. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.